People see Jamie Dornan on the red carpet, elegant, confident, with a gentle smile as if nothing could shake him. But few people know that perfection comes from long sleepless nights, from years of struggling with himself. Jamie has never been someone who wants to show off. He doesn't like noise, he's not used to being in the middle of a social media storm. However, the name Christian Grey has turned him into an icon, a perfection that makes the whole world pay attention and judge. Once, he whispered backstage, "People think I am strong and fearless. But sometimes, that image makes me not dare to breathe." Behind the calmness is the pressure to always appear neat. Behind the smile are long silences and questions. Am I living for myself, or for the eyes of others? Jamie has faced harsh comments, too many expectations, and suffocating comparisons. Sometimes, he was put in an invisible cage, where he had to be perfect to live up to his role, his reputation, and what people believed about him. And it was at that moment that those closest to him saw him trembling, tired, and very human. A close friend recounted, "One night he called me at 3 a.m. He didn't say anything but, 'I'm so tired.' I knew he wasn't talking about work. He was tired of being the person the world wanted him to be." The spotlight was bright. But behind it was the darkness of pain that no one touched. Jamie chose silence, chose maturity, chose to move slowly but surely. Because he understood. Perfection is not without cracks. Perfection is daring to admit that you also know pain. And Jamie Dornan, the man who always makes others think he is unbreakable, is still learning to be vulnerable, to live for himself, even if only for a few rare moments. Jamie collapses in the dressing room, and Dakota appears as the only figure who understands. The shoot ends. The sound of shoes, laughter, the sound of cameras fading. Everyone expected Jamie to leave the studio with his usual calm demeanor. But he walked straight into the dressing room, closing the door. And for a moment, perfection crumbled. His hands shook as he untied his tie. The mirror in front of him reflected a man who no longer recognized himself. He put his hands on the table, bowed his head low. A breath caught in his chest. Then tears fell. Not loud sobs, but silent, heavy tears, as if they had waited a long time to be free. "I don't know who I am anymore." His voice was hoarse, so low that even if someone stood right next to him they would hardly have heard it. The door to the room opened slightly, no knock. The person who entered was Dakota Johnson. No makeup, no acting, no glamour, just Dakota. The only person who had ever seen him at his weakest. She didn't ask. Not because she didn't care, but because she knew asking now meant touching a wound that had just started bleeding. Dakota just moved closer, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. Jamie didn't look up, but his shoulders trembled slightly, as if touching the right person would make the pain no longer need to be hidden. After a long moment, Dakota spoke, his voice very small, light as the wind, but strong enough to hold a crumbling soul. "Jamie, I don't need to be perfect. Not with you, not with anyone who truly loves me. No empty words of encouragement. No promises of being okay. Just the presence of someone who understood." Jamie turned around, eyes red but no longer avoiding. And in that look, not Christian Grey, not the star, not the man who was always strong. But Jamie Dornan. A man struggling to breathe in a world that demanded he be an icon. Dakota smiled, very slightly, but a smile that only the two of them understood. "You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to be sad. I'm here." And sometimes, a sentence like that is enough to pull a person back from the brink. The dressing room was quiet. No noise, no audience, no pressure. Just the two of them, standing very close, but not touching things that weren't ready to be said. Jamie sat down on the couch. Dakota sat next to him, not too close, not too far, enough for him to know she was there, enough to not make him feel scrutinized. Jamie's hand tightened. He tried to swallow the lump still lodged in his throat. You know? He began, his voice hoarse, slow, battle-weary. I'm living someone else's life. Not my own. Dakota tilted her head, listening with her heart, not just her ears. I have to be perfect. In movies, out of movies, in newspapers, on the street. I'm afraid, if I'm not perfect, people will be disappointed. Dakota didn't argue. She understood. She had been like him, only no one knew. She placed her hand on the back of his. Not pressing, not pulling, just letting him know she was still human, touchable. Jamie, perfection doesn't make people love you. She spoke slowly. People love you because you're real. Jamie laughed. A smile that was both painful and grateful, as if he had never believed he had the right to be real. Real is so vulnerable, he said. Dakota looked him straight in the eye, a look that held no judgment, no pity, just a deep understanding that knew how to embrace in silence. Yes, but that's what makes you lovable. And that's what I appreciate most about you. The room suddenly felt warmer. Not because of the light, but because of the sincerity that no longer needed to be hidden. Jamie leaned her head back, closing her eyes. For the first time in months, there was a moment when he didn't have to act. Dakota was still sitting there. Not leaving. Not changing anything. Just being there, just as he needed. And sometimes one person staying, silently, is more important than all the promises in the world. Dakota sat there, quietly beside her. No one spoke for a long moment, but the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like a necessary break between two labored breaths. Jamie exhaled slowly, as if she had finally learned not to fight with herself. Do you ever feel like you're acting when the cameras aren't on? Jamie asked, not looking at her, but hoping she would understand. Dakota smiled slightly, a sad smile. Most days, she said. Jamie turned to look at her. His eyes changed, he saw the same weariness in them. Not between actors, but between people learning to survive. Dakota continued, her voice soft as if telling a secret. I'm supposed to be the sweet girlfriend, the independent girl, the talented actress, the friendly celebrity. But sometimes, I just want to disappear for a few days. Jamie nodded. No need to explain, he understood everything. They were more alike than the world thought. Maybe, always. Dakota stood up gently. Come with me for a bit, she said. Jamie didn't ask where. He just stood up and followed, as if, in this moment, she was the only one he could trust. Outside, night break, city, the beauty of truth. The night was cool. No one recognized them, the backstage door opened onto a small path, far enough from the stage lights. The wind blew through her hair, soft, gentle, free. Dakota walked slowly, hands in her coat pockets. Jamie walked beside her, not saying a word, and not needing to. Finally, Dakota stopped at the railing and looked down at the city. Do you know why people love you? She asked. Jamie was silent. He was used to that question, but he had never known the real answer. Dakota looked straight at him, not avoiding it this time. It's not because you're perfect. It's because you always try, even when you're in pain. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't encouragement. It was the truth. Jamie looked at her for a long, long time, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. Thank you, he said. Just 2 words, but they held more than any speech could ever contain. Dakota smiled, a warm smile, but her eyes were a little wet. We're more alike than they know, she said. Jamie nodded slightly. Maybe we're the only ones who understand each other. He replied. Not a confession. Not a promise. But a truth the world will never know. And sometimes, the most beautiful truths are the ones that are left unsaid. The night air was cool. No one recognized them. The backstage door opened onto a small path, far enough from the stage lights. The wind blew through her hair, light, soft, free. Dakota walked slowly, hands in her coat pockets. Jamie walked beside her, not saying a word, and not needing to. Finally, Dakota stopped by the railing and looked down at the city. Do you know why people love you? She asked. Jamie was silent. He was used to that question, but he had never known the real answer. Dakota looked straight at him, not avoiding it this time. It's not because you're perfect. It's because you always try, even when you're in pain. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't encouragement. It was the truth. Jamie looked at her for a long, long time, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. Thank you, he said. Just 2 words, but more than any speech. Dakota smiled, a warm smile, but her eyes were a little wet. We're more alike than they know, she said. Jamie nodded slightly. Maybe we're the only ones who understand each other. He replied. Not a confession. Not a promise. But a truth the world will never know. And sometimes, the most beautiful truths are the ones that are left unsaid.